It's time for this week's episode of Brandon Sports Talk, featuring in-depth interviews from those who are trending in the world of athletics. And now, here's the host of Brandon Sports Talk, Brandon Pate.
Welcome back to Brandon Sports Talk. I'm going to be talking with the USA Rugby professional rugby player, Ryan Carlyle. How are you doing today?
Good. How are you, Brandon?
I'm doing good. Can you talk about how you knew that you wanted to play professional rugby?
Yeah. So that's funny you say that. I didn't start playing professional rugby until after college, but I always knew, ever since I was a little girl, that I knew I wanted to be a professional athlete. And I played every single sport under the sun. I loved soccer, softball, and basketball the most. So I played softball for as long as I could. And then in college, I found rugby. And I knew that that was going to be the sport that was going to take me the furthest. So I stayed competitive with it, kept learning, and I went pro.
What was it like going to South Carolina Gamecocks to be on the club rugby team?
It was so cool because South Carolina is such a huge, massive school in the SEC. Always as a high school athlete, I knew I wanted to play college sports for a big conference like that. I thought I was going to play softball there, but that didn't really work out. Being a part of the club rugby team was super cool. Great way to meet friends. It was a great way to get a group of people with common interests. The team was so much fun. And we played for both the city club team as well as the school club team. So we got double the amount of playing in. South Carolina was great for my exposure to the sport and introducing me to it.
What was that experience like of playing in the SEC?
So the club rugby team had a smaller conference, but it was so cool to be able to travel around to the similar schools, Clemson, Alabama, all these big name schools, and see those campuses play against really high level athletes, similar to myself, ones that excelled really well in high school and probably in college as well, but found a passion in a sport that wasn't a Division I sport at that time.
What was that feeling like of getting to put on the Gamecocks club rugby jersey?
It was pretty special as a brand new rugby player. Rugby is really cool in the fact that they present jerseys as a ceremony. So being able to wear the rugby jersey, it was full of pride because I'd finally made the team, got a roster spot, wore that jersey for the very first time. A South Carolina rugby jersey was the very first rugby jersey I ever put on, and I'll never forget that. And I actually think I stole one from school.
What were some of your biggest accomplishments at South Carolina?
I think in terms of rugby, just learning the game. I will never forget where I started. I got Rookie of the Year my very first season. I was able to introduce other women to the sport. I met some of my closest friends in college on that team. So maybe the team didn't win championships, but I have such fond memories of that team and my experience in South Carolina.
What was it like coming out of college of South Carolina and getting into professional rugby?
I was able to play so much rugby between South and North Carolina and all of the Southeast. There was a really big unity in the Southeast. I was able to do a lot of national team tryouts in the South. And I think it's just an honor to remember that that's where I started. And that's the reason why I made the national team in the first place.
What was that transition like from obviously being in South Carolina to go to San Diego to play for the San Diego Surf?
So the San Diego Surfers was a team I had idolized when I was playing in college. Once I started learning different leagues and the different teams, San Diego was one of the top teams in the country. It was where a lot of the national team players were playing at the time, and they were winning. They had a coach, and they were in San Diego, one of the beautiful cities in the country. So coming out to San Diego and being able to play on that team was really special.
What was that feeling like when you signed with San Diego Surf?
San Diego Surfers, it was pretty exciting because they're part of the Women's Premier League at the time, and I was just playing club in college. So to be able to go straight from a club team in college to a premier rugby team in the country was super special. I was surrounded by a lot of great players that, again, taught me more about the game, more about the sport, more about the culture. And I was living in a beautiful city, so super exciting.
How did it feel to put on your first professional rugby jersey?
Unreal. But anytime you put on any jersey with your country on it, not high school or college, it actually says USA. That's something super special. It's something very few people will ever get to experience. And the first time I wore mine was in March of 2011, and I was playing in Hong Kong. And I'll never forget that tournament. I'll never forget anything about that entire experience.
What are some of your biggest accomplishments with the San Diego Surfs?
San Diego Surfers, we won 3 national championships. It was so fun. Richie Walker was the coach. So he's from New Zealand. So he was teaching about high level play. We won 2 national championships on the 15s team and 1 championship on the 7s team. So we were so much fun. We were winning. We were traveling all across the country playing. It was really cool.
What was that moment when you got the call or the email that you made the national team?
I was in North Carolina living and doing an internship in Charlotte. And I was thinking about going to law school, and I was committing to a law school in North Carolina. And that email came from the national team coach inviting me to play for the national team out here in California. And I read it and I didn't have any second guessing. I knew right away that's what I was going to do. I no longer cared about law school. I no longer cared about the Carolinas, or where I'm originally from is New York. And I was ready to pack all my bags, sell everything in California.
Of course, when you got that initial email, was there shock that it was like, oh my God, is this true? I made the team?
Oh yeah. I read it and then I reread it, and I made sure it was sent to the right email. I made sure my name was actually on it. I made sure it was actually intended for me and it wasn't a mistake. I couldn't believe it.
What was that feeling like when you got to there and you got to put on that national jersey?
It was really special. It was super intimidating. My very first practice, I almost felt like I wasn't ready for it. But the team was super cool. The coach was very understanding of how new I was to the game, and we just hit the ground running.
How was it like, obviously, getting your first start in 2013 in the World Cup?
That came very shockingly as well. I was playing on the team for about 3 years, but not in the top 15 women that were making rosters every time. So I was kind of always on that reserve list, non-traveling reserve, sometimes traveling reserve, but not getting a lot of playing time in competition. So I was feeling like I wasn't good enough. And once the roster was set in 2013, I went away to play in Russia with a bunch of college women in the World University Games. And I got a phone call while I was there saying I was brought up to the World Cup roster. And again, I was like, are you serious? Are you speaking to the right person? Are you sure you called the right number? I need to call my mom.
Of course, at that moment, was it like, oh my God, I'm ready to play?
Oh yeah, I was so ready. I felt like the only thing I wanted to do was playing a game. And I just wasn't making those rosters. So once I got that call, I was like, this is it. I'm so ready. I've been working so hard for this. Let's go.
Of course, at that time, was there any intuition that it would happen, or were you all at shock?
I was completely shocked. I'm still shocked.
What was the 2018 season like going to the World Cup?
That was a super fun season. That was probably one of our most successful seasons. It was after the Olympics. So after the Olympics, we kind of cooled off from that. And then we knew we had the World Cup coming up, and we just grinding. We were winning. We were playing so well. We had a team that was together for over 5 years. So we were really working well together. We knew each other really well. We were comfortable with the coaching staff and the players. So going into that World Cup, I felt super confident. It was also in America, it was on our home turf. So it was so exciting to have all of these other countries coming to America for a World Cup. And we played in San Francisco, which was super cool here in California.
What was that feeling like in 2016 going to the Olympics for the first time in Rio?
Going to the Olympics was an incredible experience. You're very proud of yourself for making an Olympic roster, but I was also so proud of USA Rugby as a whole for this was the first time rugby was in the Olympics in almost 100 years. So it was very cool to be a part of that original pathway, America being a part of the Olympic agenda. So I think being there it was overwhelming to be very proud of American rugby's journey, as well as your own personal journey, as well as staying focused on the fact that you still have to compete in the Olympics.
What was that feeling like, obviously, when you got to the Olympics and you were like, oh my God, I'm here at the biggest stage of them all?
Yeah, I probably said that 110 times while I was at the Olympics. I felt very starstruck. Kind of walk around the Olympic Village and you just see people you see on TV and you're like, what the heck am I doing here? And you're playing on a field and the women's basketball team is in the gym right across the street and you're like, oh my God, professional basketball players. They don't even know that we exist. So I felt so small, but like so big at the same time.
How did it feel to obviously have the Olympic rings on that jersey?
That was incredible. It just like I said, when you wear that nation, when it says USA, you feel like you're no longer playing for yourself and your own goals, but you're playing and you're representing an entire country. And then with the Olympic rings, you're representing the values of the Olympics, and everyone who wears those rings is on that same page. Like, we're all here for the same reason. We're all here for the good of sport. And we just want to send out about the values of sport.
What was that 2016 season like versus the 2020 season?
2016 was super stressful, I think, because everyone knew the Olympics was coming up. And that very year, there's not much you're going to change in 1 year that's going to be different for the Olympics versus the entire 4 years building up. So I think we put a lot of pressure on ourselves as athletes and a team the year leading up to the very first Olympics versus 2020. A lot of the players that went in 2020 were there in 2016. So they probably a more calm feeling of going to the Olympics because they're there for the second time versus the first time. So it's a little less shocking.
What was it like, obviously, going to the Olympics in 2020 for yourself?
Going to the Olympics, knowing that I knew since I was like 4 years old, knowing that you set your mind to something for an entire life and everything you do leading up to that is just for that one specific reason. When you get there, you're kind of relieved, but at the same time, you're freaking out because now you're actually there. Now you actually have to do it.
What are some of your game day routines and rituals like?
On game day, I always eat the same thing. There's like specific brands of like socks that I just know I feel comfortable in that I'll always wear. I wear my hair the same way, like a braid to keep it out of my face. You start to get superstitious about a lot of tiny things, but for the most part, I eat pretty much the same exact thing on game day, and it's a very regimented thing, so I can avoid any sort of stomach aches. There's already that going on with nerves.
Of course, what does a typical game day look like on sevens?
Yeah, so for sevens, we will play probably 3 games a day, and if the tournament starts later in the day, we'll still wake up super early to get what we call a activation session in. So the team will wake up. We'll all do rehab exercises to get our body primed. We'll eat breakfast, and then we'll do a very quick, short, fast, explosive training session. It'll be no longer than 40 minutes just to get our hands on the ball. So the first time we're touching a ball isn't at the game. And then we'll have downtime. A lot of us have to get our wrists, ankles taped. So we'll get taped up. We'll do our pregame rituals as individuals, whether it's watching TV, listening to music, writing journals, watching film, whatever we each need to do as individuals. And then we all load the bus and we'll head to the stadium probably about 2 to 3 hours before kickoff. We'll get settled into our locker room, find your place, get your uniform on, do any other rehab exercises or activation exercises. And then games happen pretty much every 90 minutes. So you'll play 14 minutes, do a cool down, and then kind of relax for an hour before you have to play again.
What was that like, obviously, getting to play multiple games in multiple days?
Super challenging. I think it's at that point, you're already physically fit. So on game day, it's that mental and emotional challenge of controlling your focus, controlling how your emotions are. You can't be up and excited from sunrise to sunset. That's way too exhausting. So you have to find ways to calm down. You have to, if you can fall asleep, that would be ideal. You have to be able to like turn it off and turn it back on, and turn it off and turn it back on.
Of course, did you have any favorite memories and moments in this previous Olympic?
My favorite moments from the Olympics, scoring my first try. I scored a try in the Olympics, so that was super cool. Against Colombia, starting against France. So I had coming off the bench for all of the Olympics, and then in our game against France, I started. And I played the entire game, so that was super cool. Having your family in the crowd, that's always special, especially when you're in a foreign country, to look up and see your family there, like with USA gear on. And then Matthew McConaughey was at our games. That was pretty memorable.
What was that like, scoring your first goal in the Olympics?
I think scoring a try in any game is super exciting. And when you're playing in the Olympics, you're not really thinking that it is the Olympics. You're just playing your game, and it's after the fact that you're like, oh man, I just scored a try in the Olympics. That's so cool.
Who are some of the people that you look up to in the sport of rugby?
I'll always look up to the players that started the sport in America. So there's a long list of female athletes started decades ago, on their own dime, paying for everything themselves. They're the ones that like started carving out that trail, that same pathway that we were able to pave a little bit ourselves and really make a foundation for it in America. I'll also always look up to the female athletes that were putting themselves first, ones that were able to get married and continue to play, ones that were able to have babies and then come back to play. That's something huge that USA, I think, lacks, whereas you see other nations that have rugby established, they have plans and things in place to excel as mothers and wives and athletes. So I'll always look up to those women.
What is it like getting to play with some of your teammates like Nalia?
I've had so much fun with all my teammates. A lot of the women on the rugby team have really interesting stories of how they started playing rugby, where they came from. And a lot of them didn't play ball sports. A lot of them were just running track and field. And there's always something you can learn about that sort of skill level and something you can teach them. So I played with so many people with so many different sports backgrounds that it was really cool to learn from each other and figure out how we're going to be best fit together next to each other on the field.
What are some of your future plans in the sport of rugby?
For rugby, I hope that more little girls start playing sooner. I think if I could do anything, I would have started sooner. Just learning how to play, run, catch, and tackle as a young girl would have been so helpful, because I was playing when I was 20. I was playing with girls almost 7 years younger than me that had been playing for longer than I had. And that was one of those things that clicks in your head that, wow, the sport really is growing. People are starting to play sooner. So if we can grow the youth rugby for both boys and girls, that would be really great for the program.
What is the preparation like for you getting prepared for this next Olympics?
Well, I'm retired now, so I'm going to be prepared as a big fan of rugby in the next Olympics. But maybe I can start doing more of a mentorship or a coaching role for the team. That'd be nice.
Of course, as you are retired, what are some of your future plans in your retirement?
Yeah, so I am engaged, so I'm going to get married soon. I'm a professional firefighter now, so I'm going to start growing my career there. I'd love to have kids, buy a house, all the grown-up things that I couldn't do while I was playing.
What advice would you give college rugby players looking to play?
Advice to college rugby players would be to seek more competitive pathways. So even if your club team isn't great, isn't super competitive, that doesn't mean you can't go find other competitive outlets. Just like I said, I played in South Carolina. We weren't winning any national championships, but I was able to work with players and coaches and find other teams to play with that would expose me to more competitive games and competitions.
What advice would you give those people looking to go to the Olympics for the first time or the second time?
Definitely don't stop trying. It's not going to happen on the first try. The competition pool is open growing, but if you really think you have what it takes and you are committed to that journey, then just keep trying, keep putting your name in the hat, go to every tryout that's available, call, even if there isn't a tryout, call and put yourself out there. Just don't stop trying.
What advice would you give those professional rugby players like yourself that are in that stage of transitioning into retirement?
Yeah, I think it's easy to get caught just playing rugby and focusing on being the best player you can be, but you have to be a really good human off of the field. So just always having that balance between being your professional rugby player and a good person, and understanding what your values are, and how those values are going to help transition in whatever your next path is. Just because you set yourself up for the future doesn't mean you're taking away from anything that you're doing in the present.
What advice would you give those rugby players that are transitioning into the corporate world, that are retiring and transitioning into the corporate world?
I think it's really a good idea to set yourself up financially. As rugby players in America, we're independent contractors. So it's really important to understand how that works financially, especially during taxes, and then understanding how that changes when you become an employee somewhere else. So just be smart with your money. Don't get excited about the bonuses and spend it all in sneakers. Invest it. Save it.
That's great advice. Where can my listeners find you at on social media?
Yeah, so my Instagram and Twitter handle is at RYY_CAR. And my Facebook name is Ryan K. Carlyle.
Thank you again, Ryan Carlyle, for your interview, and best of luck in your future wherever it may hold you.
Thank you, Brandon.
You can find Brandon Sports Talk on Facebook at Brandon Sports Talk, Instagram at Brandon Sports Talk, Twitter at Talk_Brandon, and you can find me on YouTube at Brandon Sports Talk. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Thank you again, Ryan Carlyle, for your interview, and best of luck in your future.
Thank you.
You've been watching Brandon Sports Talk. Please feel free to like, share, and subscribe to Brandon Sports Talk on social media and on YouTube.